Evening, members of council. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting of Policy and Priorities Committee to order. It's been moved by Councillor Ribbiak that the agenda for the December 19th, 2016 regular meeting of Committee of the Whole, PNP, be adopted as circulated. Are there any changes to the agenda? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Are there any conflicts of interest that any members of council need to disclose?
No,
Thank you. Can that be so noted that there are no conflicts? Now we move to new business. It's been moved by Councillor King. Be it resolved that the Policy and Priorities Committee receive the report Capital Budget Request, Tice Road Corrections, for information, and that the PNP Committee recommend that Council approve the capital budget as requested, funds for Tice Road corrections.
It's actually building.
Thank you. Well, the resolution is here. Sorry, say
Building, Tice Road building renovations.
Building renovations, much better than corrections. It sounds like a detention center. Tice Road building renovations. Councillor King, you moved it. Did you want to speak to it at all, or did you want to move to Councillor Kersey, who indicated he wanted to speak to it?
Councillor Kersey wanted to speak to it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a number of questions regarding the report and a few concerns to express. It seems to me that that a number of years ago, we spent a significant amount of money buying 2 trailers that were put at the Pelham Arena. The sales pitch to council and what we bought into was that those facilities, when the arena fell out of use, those trailers would be moved to Tice Road, and we would be utilized to upgrade the lunchroom and shower and office areas, and a number of other deficiencies that were recognized there, and that was the argument that was presented, and we endorsed and supported it. And now I look at this budget, and I see that we're spending $117,000 on a lunchroom, shower, and office renovation, including engineering. In addition, an additional $11,000 towards this same expense for lockers and et cetera, et cetera. So I have a concern there, particularly with that part of the $227,000. It's obvious that we have a roof issue there. It's unfortunate the roof issue has been let go to the point that it's caused the amount of damage that it has, but so be it. If we need to put a new roof on and repair that roof, let's repair it. But also, I think that incumbent in looking at this whole Tice Road and regional staff and all of that, and the report really speaks somewhat to it, but not extensively. I think it's inherent, Mr. Mayor, that we also look at the other facilities that we have around the town, such as Park Lane, where it's a significant building. It has a large number of bays and work areas. I believe there's some office areas there. Centennial Park has a relatively large building that could be utilized for equipment storage and such things. Before we do extensive renovations to one particular facility, I think it's inherent that we should look at all of our facilities and how they could be optimized to address the needs that we have at the present and what we foresee in the future. So, and I don't see that reflected in this report. So I would like to see that before we make any final decisions. I certainly would not support the lunchroom renovations, et cetera. I think health and safety, yes, let's get the water fixed, let's get the roof fixed. The black mold can be addressed by a good washing with bleaches and a paint job, and certainly not anywhere near the kind of money that we're talking here. So those are my thoughts, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to hear what my colleagues might have to say about that.
Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues? Councillor Papp?
Well, I also concur with Councillor Kersey. I'm struggling with notwithstanding that some of these issues are health and safety, you have to do those. If you don't, you're non-compliant, you'll get a Ministry of Labor order. We've been down that road before. The others, I guess the question is, it's doing these repairs will ultimately, the idea that in 2 years' time, we'll have the new facility, so this will become the accommodating site. Is that correct? Through you, Mr. Mayor, Madam Director?
Ms. Clemencio?
Through your Mr. Mayor, that's correct, yes.
So I think it's worthwhile looking at other possible sites to see if there's other ways in which we can, facilitate this. Like I said, we just spent, those other, I'm trying to remember what the figure was, but it was a couple of $100,000 on those other, what do you call it?
Trailers.
Those trailers at the arena site. So when I look at the total investment, if we do all that, that's close to $500,000. And I think we need to take another look at this. And then secondly, I just caution again, only for the purposes, I notice in here again, there's some reference to the site of the arena on Hay Street, and it says the site is closing will be offered for sale. Red flag, we've already told the neighbors, we're going to be careful, we're going to go through, so I'm not being critical, I'm just saying, we don't know. If it does happen, but we still have, we said to them we would put them through the protocol. Is that, am I?
Council's not made the decision.
That's correct. That's what I'm trying to get at. And I'm not trying to be critical, just saying, let's not put out stuff that we don't know if it's gonna happen. Council makes the decision, then it's our call, right? Okay. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll see what the rest of my colleagues feel.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with what was previously said about anything dealing with health and safety we need to work on immediately. Looking at some of these photographs, I think it's merely house cleaning and maintenance, which is lacking. And, that's not a health and safety issue, and certainly we don't have to spend tons of money in order to get at that. But the big point that gets me now is there was, to me, some reporting that really needs to happen. We just came across, all of a sudden, a truck that has been going for years that needs to be replaced immediately. This is happening now. Obviously, it's been going on for years, and we don't know about it. We need to build in some kind of reporting to see the conditions of this. We've got asset management stuff that has to be in place, so we have to know the condition of our buildings and our assets, and that's not happening here. So what we need to do is build something into that, and I would like staff to really have a good look at that and reporting when these things are starting to happen. They're going to cost a lot less money than after it has happened. So I have real concerns that we let things go too long, and that's unacceptable. So that's my piece. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Others?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not much to add, really. I would like to hear what consideration was given to the trailer, because as Councillor Kersey correctly recalls, we did expect it to have a life after Hay Street. I'm sure it must have been considered in the course of the creation of this report, and I'd certainly like to hear what that consideration was.
You want to hear that now, or do you want to hear it?
If it's available now, Mr. Mayor, certainly, but if it
No,
requires
if it's available
a...
now, I think there's other information that perhaps council might be looking for. Ms. Clemencio, do you want to just comment on that and sort of? I'm gonna ask it this way. The councillor asked a specific question about that, but you and I have had a conversation very briefly about sort of what led to this report, and I understand that staff has looked at different locations and things. I don't know whether you're prepared to answer some of that more generally now and come back to us with that information as you help the councillor with his question.
For you, Mr. Mayor, I can make an attempt to answer all these questions. We started a How Might We in July of 2015 to start looking forward onto how we were going to support this shift of staff from the arena to somewhere or to stay there, but knowing that the new community center would involve some of the staff moving there and looking at what the future of the arena site is, knowing that it's possible that that wouldn't stay on as an operations center for public works staff. So the How Might We started there. We looked at, through the How Might We process, East Fonthill land, Centennial Park, Tice Road expansion, purchasing land next to Tice Road, purchasing at 20 in Effingham, consideration of purchasing the center school
Pelham Center School. Yeah.
Pelham Center School, Park Lane considerations, the potential purchase of the water station site and what could happen there, even Town Hall. So all of those, including the modifications to the existing arena or bringing services, facilities, structure from the arena to Tice Road or to other locations were thoroughly considered and evaluated by the group for the last 16 months. At that time in the fall, we went through the how might we process, and we came to the conclusion, based primarily on cash flow restrictions, that the best option, as directed by the CAO, would be to do modifications at Tice Road to accommodate the need to move equipment and staff in the future from the arena site. From there, we started to lay out the plan of how this could happen and what would be needed, and went through several iterations on how to make this happen, especially from a timing perspective and keeping costs to a minimum. So the report outlines the pieces that staff can't do, and also outlines the pieces that staff are willing to take on internally to do some of these renovations, both to the building and to the site, to accommodate some better workflow, improved health and safety, and accommodate the additional staff and a very large amount of equipment and supplies that has to have a new home somewhere. That is what we've come up with, that has gone through several iterations, gone through SMT, gone through staff, and had some third-party quotes on it to make sure we knew that the numbers were right. So speaking to the trailer, originally, because of the timing, we were trying to figure out how we could make this transition work and bring those 2 trailer units over from the arena, knowing that they could come to Tice in the future and be used for a lunchroom and a washroom, or for an office, or both. And because we are trying to save money by rolling this out over the course of the year, and having staff take on a lot of the renovations themselves, the arena still has to operate while we do these renovations at Tice. So the arena needs at least the trailers to stay at least for the next year until the staff, or 2 years until the staff transition into the community center. So originally we budgeted to rent similar trailers. So we're not building something at Tice that's eventually going to come over to Tice. But based on costing, that was stricken. And so instead we said, what if we make a temporary, or make a lunchroom in Tice, and then when those 2 trailers do come, we would use them as additional office space. There is no shower accommodation with the trailer that's at the arena or at Tice Road now. So that's an additional renovation. It's strictly lunchroom, washroom, and the junior B trailer that's separate. So it's a timing issue to a great degree, and we factored in the plan to assume that those trailers would come, and we would get by until those trailers could come, and we'd make full use of those when they're able to come after the community center opens. With regard to the black mold, that is actually an internal project that we said we would try to deal with. It's in the storage trailers that hold up the salt dome, so that's not part of the renovations. And the original reporting on these conditions was back in September 2014, from when I was able to review the condition assessment summaries, and the status of all the town facilities was communicated then. We then translated the facility needs for deficiencies into the 20-year plan last year, and we updated that this year. So all the output of that condition assessment for all the town facilities has been translated into that 20-year plan, so the council's aware of what's needed there. I hope that answers all the questions.
Very comprehensive answer. Thank you very much. I had Councillor Rybak. Is there anything further, Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I'm hearing is that timing means, timing requirements provide that we're still going to need those facilities for the next couple of years at the arena, and that at the time of its move, the use of those facilities, those trailers at Tice is going to defray other costs, other capital costs that would arise at that point if we didn't have that as an alternative. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct, through you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm satisfied that the issue of the trailers was considered in that, so I'm going to be happy to support this
Okay.
request for capital.
All right, thank you. Councillor Dooley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment through you. I'm glad to see that the asset reporting is a work in progress, and on a go-forward basis, we'll be getting the reports, and I really appreciate that initiative going through because I feel that's very important at this table. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Others? Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I wonder, we're going to use those trailers, and there's 2 trailers, one of which does have showers. Who are we going to put in these offices? Most of the people that work in public works are on the road and doing work and not sitting in offices, so I just find it, I mean, they don't have offices now, so what are we going to use these offices for?
I think some of them may have an office now. Ms. Clemencio?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are currently 3 offices at the arena that are used for the admin, the lead hand, and for the manager. And as well, those offices are temporarily borrowed by the other staff that have to do public service requests reporting at the end of the day. They're also compiling information for how might we's and such, so there's workstations and offices. So the offices that we are planning are not closed door rooms by any means. It's simply shifting around staff so we could have some workstations and accommodate the lunchroom coming downstairs so that it would be a proper lunchroom. It's simply moving things around and adding the workstations to support the lead hand and the additional staff that do need to be able to share a workstation and log in and do some work for their regular day duties.
Thank you. Councillor?
Well, I would be interested to see a layout of how they think the Tice Road site should look and how it would look with the trailers and where those people would be and how many people would be at Tice Road. I think that would help us get a comprehensive understanding of Tice Road. I'd also like to see the evaluation of these other sites. I mean, Park Lane is central to our community. It's right downtown. It has a significant size. None of that's reflected here. We've just focused on Tice, and I do trust our staff, but I think having council informed about all of this sort of deliberation that's been going on since 2015 would be helpful for us when we get confronted by a report to make decisions that are fully informed. So that would help me get over this. I'm having a struggle with it, Mr. Mayor, I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor. Others? Councillor Papp?
Sure. Let me take it to a whole new level. 2 years from now, what am I going to see at Tice Road? All the vehicles, all the public works staff? Is that, and let me not put, do you know what I'm getting? That will be, is that going to be an operations center? Is that the ultimate raison d'etre? That in fact, equipment, staff, whatever have you, will be operating out of that central site? So on a positive side, let me put it this way. Then you invest what you need to make sure that that's the way it stands, that it's not just, it's not there as a temporary measure. Am I fair to say that?
Ms. Clemencio?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the long-term intention hasn't been decided at this point. This is a short-term fix, but we do feel there's potential that Tice Road could remain the operations center. As is, it would be challenged to take on more growth. This is to patch us through and get us through the transition to support the community center and the shift in the staff. Having additional equipment and staff reporting into different areas. When I originally came on, I think it was intended or thought that arena staff could move to the community center, keep their equipment somewhere else, check in at the community center. From an operations standpoint, if you picture yourself coming in with your lunchbox, checking into the community center for your morning tailgate meeting and your lunchroom there, then having to leave, get into your a personal car and go to where your vehicle is stationed or your equipment is stationed, you're talking about efficiencies issues. Right now, we have tools being stored at Park Lane and water meters. We have fleet being stored at the arena, fueling up or washing at Tice Road. It's a bit of an operations nightmare to try to find efficiencies, and when we're trying to share resources and share fleet and plan accordingly, we've got things scattered. So we're intending to move towards having a central operations center. Tice Road would be ideal. This will help us set some of the stage, but it really is to correct some deficiencies, to allow for some additional staff to come and correct some health and safety issues that are existing.
I would suggest, and I normally don't, you plan for that central site. And that's something that you need to go through and figure out. If that's exactly what you want to do, then you invest the resources to do that. I respect that it's a short-term solution, but from my perspective, what I'm looking at, I'm thinking at the end, and the mayor recalled at some point, our friends at the region were going to offer us another site. Is that not correct? Or I wasn't dreaming?
No,
We've never
it's
seen it at the moment.
still sort of in limbo, unfortunately.
Right, you know what I'm talking about. Then I thought, geez, that'd be nice to give you the actual physical site where you could carry out your operations from one site. Park the cars, do all the work, park the vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. So that's still in the works. I don't know yet, but right now what we have is the Tice Road asset, right?
That's all we have.
That's all you got right now. Is that fair to say?
Just to answer your question
go
more
ahead.
directly, Counselor, my understanding from the region is, and I think, let's say what it is, it's the Pelham Center at,
Right.
for the region, what's it called? Pelham Yard?
Pelham Yards.
Pelham Yard.
Yeah.
At 20 at Victoria.
Right.
They haven't been conclusive in their work, but the sort of interim work that's come out of that is saying, although it appears they want to move operations to one location, sort of Western operations to one location, it doesn't make sense from a logistics point of view to move all of them, so that they would still have some vehicles at the Pelham Yard site, but they would want to concentrate it at the Smithville site so that they can better serve sort of the western part. But for snow clearing, for example, to get to that location and get out on the roads, those two significant regional roads quickly, it makes sense to be at the Pelham Yard. So it doesn't appear that they would abandon the entire site, but they might abandon part of the site, which could be an opportunity for us, but it may not be an opportunity for us. So it's still up in the air at this point. I'm hoping that it can be resolved. There have been some staff challenges at the region that have not allowed us to resolve that this year, but hope springs eternal, Counselor.
That's correct. So just to build on that and to keep moving along, the ultimate, I would say, is our physical site is to maximize its use. Is that fair thing to say, is to use the potential that's there to, like I say, amalgamate, consolidate all of our, quote, operations centers, types of services at that site. Equipment, manpower, you name it, right? Technology, whatever the case may be. So if that's seen as this investment is to help move that along, then I'm okay with it. As long as that we move towards the larger plan, that ultimately you'll be there. And if, like you say, Mr. Mayor, if somewhere along the road, the Victoria site comes on, that's a bonus. If we even decide to do it. What I'm hearing is that, somewhere in the next year and a half to 18 months, or to 24 months, we've got to figure out and this is what you're suggesting, temporarily. And I'm thinking it's more permanent, because you're going to be also rebuilding some aspects of that building, I would presume. Is that fair?
Ms. Clemencio?
Mr. Mayor, yes, it's fair. It's a long-term plan with a short-term first step that we're working towards.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt, but let's call it what it is. We want to centralize, consolidate operations. We know we're not going to stay at the current arena site, so all these other pieces will come onto that site. So if this is an investment into that to help move us along, okay. But that would include whatever these other components are, those other But just it's a struggle when you're trying to piece, so you've investigated all our other potential Pelham sites, right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did with the intention that the goal, one of the objectives was to streamline the location so
Into
that parts, tools, fleet, fuel, washing, lunchroom was all in one location. You come in, you gear up, and you get out there to work instead of.
Okay, I'll leave it at, that's what I'm trying to get at.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Junkin for the first time.
That's not bad. To you, Mr. Mayor, first of all, Director, an excellent report. That's the first I have heard of that report being so thorough. And I think like a bunch of other people on this council, we more or less thought that this was sprung on us kind of quickly out of the blue. But you and your department have obviously been working on this for quite a while. And I can appreciate that. And that sort of helps everything, believe me. And realizing that, yes, we've got a community center coming along, and sooner or later we're going to have to do something with the old arena, and realizing that nothing happens overnight, this does, I think, make a lot of sense. Tell you the honest truth, if I had my way, we would spend more money and do away with that silly flat roof that keeps leaking and keeps costing us $50,000 all the time. But I think we should tear that off and put a different kind of roof on, but whatever. I imagine we'll spend $70,000 and it'll be good for another 3 years. But myself, after hearing the director's report, the thought that's gone into this, the consolidation on Tice Road, yeah, I'm actually sold on it, to tell you the honest truth.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll say this with due respect to all of staff. The decision to centralize operations is a council decision. We should have been made aware of all of this information as it was being developed. There should have been a recommendation report come back to this council with the logic behind making this. We wouldn't be sitting at this table having this discussion today. So until I see that report and have it fleshed out on why the decisions were made and why this is viewed as a best practice, because there are other municipalities that use a decentralized view and I think and operate that way and find it works quite well because you're in different parts of the community at the same time. So I'm not trying to be a jerk about this, but I really feel like we need more information to make the decision. If it goes to a vote today, I won't support it. Perhaps if I got the additional information, my curiosity would be satisfied, and then I might be more willing to support it. So I still feel that is a council decision to centralize based on recommendations from staff. I haven't seen a report that's brought that forward until we heard about it tonight.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Councillor Ribbiak, and then I'd like to make some comments. Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and just as this discussion has been going on, a couple of things have occurred to me. First, I have to agree with Councillor Kersey that it would have been nice to have kind of been clued into the discussion as it was going on, and this report might not have been a surprise, and I think that we're reacting to the surprise as much as anything else. I sure wouldn't want, however, to make something other than the best condition simply because I was taken by surprise. I think I can live with the surprise and still make a decision. The other is that I think that we've been having a discussion about the centralization of services, and I think Councillor Kersey is right, that's a council decision, but we're not being asked to make that decision here and now. We're being asked to deal with issues of the moment that need to be dealt with in order to get us through the next little while in a way that makes some sort of sense. And I think that the bigger decision will probably come to us, and we'll have an opportunity to weigh in on that one based on all of the discussion that would have gone on with respect to that. So I have not heard anything to take me off my position that I would support this.
Okay, thank you. Just to kind of reflect on what council's saying and staff saying, and also sort of my own I think when we think about this issue, we knew that by making the decisions that we made earlier in this year in terms of moving ahead with the community center, that it would have specific ramifications, and that perhaps at that point back in April, May, we said, well, you know what, we have some time and we're expecting certain reports to come to council about the transition period and how we might move forward. And I think this is the first of those reports in terms of getting us there. I think we're reacting, some of us are reacting, and myself can be included in that, in terms of, because we like to see the longer term and we want to be part of that discussion and how do we get there. Whereas I think perhaps staff looked at this and said, well, we know that eventually we're going to go there, but in the meantime, we have to take some, I think they used the word short-term actions to get us there. And probably if you were to use a scenario planning exercise and say, well, we could consolidate over here, or we could consolidate over here, we could do this, what are the chances of something happening at the regional yard or the town buying a piece of property somewhere or whatever? Regardless of all of that, if you look at a scenario planning point of view, something has to be done with this facility, I think is probably the approach that staff took. The director, I think, and I want to, build on what Councillor Junkin said, the director and others gave a great explanation verbally, but I don't think I could replicate that explanation out tomorrow when somebody stops me on the street and says, why are you doing what you're doing? And I think it would be important for that to come back to council in writing with this report as sort of a compendium to it. So the community, I think, and council looks at this and says, this is ultimately the long-term decision. We want to get to point D. This is step B from being an A. So what else is there? What else is going to come up? And I think council is reacting the way it is because council and the community wants to know kind of generally where we're going. We could, as a council, say, you know what, Hay Street's a great location. Let's centralize all of our operations right there. It's perfect. We got a big facility, we got a roof, whatever, right? We haven't had that discussion. So what I would recommend somehow, and I'm just looking for colleagues' feedback on this, is that one, I think we should get what the director said earlier in writing to us in a compendium report. And two, I think we need to look at sort of the longer term, where are we going? If it is, as Councillor Papp indicated, we are going to centralize things, that's one thing. If it's, as Councillor Kersey said, others don't do it that way, is that the right way to go? It's important to have those discussions at a council level. Interestingly, Niagara EMS had those discussions. We have an EMS station in Font Hill, in Pelham, and now they're looking at a different way of organizing themselves after running for 12 or 15 years, I think, in the way in which they've been running, which is sort of a decentralized. They're saying maybe it needs to be centralized. And so the region's looking at that too, and it's an important exercise to say if there are efficiencies with centralizing and they can be found, then maybe we should move in that direction. So Councillor Kersey suggested that we have sort of a general sketch up of what the site would look like. That would be helpful, again, so that we can explain it to the folks here that we're representing, to the public. What are you planning to do? What about this? What about that? What does that mean for different operations? So in terms of way forward, I think it would be, committee could approve this evening, or we could request more information and just forward it to council and then discuss it there, or we could just postpone it, get that report, and send it to the next P&P meeting, which I think is that first meeting in January. Is that correct? We could put it to committee at the first meeting in January or second meeting or whenever it is, an appropriate time. So I guess those are the options for council. My preference would be to get more of that background information that some councillors have said that they're looking for. Essentially what the director said earlier that helped a councillor say this is the right way to go. But I think from a community point of view, we should get that. It's not, I don't think, unless the director says that it's urgent that we approve this evening and council approve it at our first meeting in January. Can it wait till the second meeting in January? Probably. But I think it's important to have the feeling and the understanding of where we're going. So those are my thoughts. Councillor Papp, did you want to?
I would build on that. I think we need to rationalize and add substance to this report so that we have a good framework on which to make the decision, notwithstanding the fact that we understand you have a short-term challenge that you have to meet. That's given. But at the same token, also looking at what the ultimate goal will be, so that we're not trying to second-guess the direction of our operations, because you are a critical aspect of our operations. I mean, that's going to be not only in the short term, but the long term, because we're growing, so we need to figure out that, not today, but at least, just as a quick question, is there anything within the context of the report that puts us in jeopardy or non-compliance with health and safety that we have to do now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the two items of most concern is the water and the
Potable
shower
water?
facilities.
Those are important. Only because I've been involved in situations where if you don't, the last thing you want is a ministry order.
That's right.
So the potable water, and you need showers. Is that what I'm hearing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct, and we're just reluctant to make those changes immediately if we are perhaps about to embark on some other building renovations.
Right.
That's why we were just trying to time this out.
So picking up on you, Mr. Mayor, would it be reasonable to say you bring it back first week in, what we say, in January? Give us that background substance, and then we can make the decision then. And given us a better understanding of how you're all, and we are familiar, there was a condition report given to us back 2 or 3 years ago on our building. Wouldn't hurt for us to be refreshed. Councillor Junkin, there was a lot of work done to give us an idea of where we at across the board. And this one in particular has been an ongoing challenge, I have to tell you, Tice Road. So I'll leave it at that, Mr. Mayor, concur with you.
Okay, thank you. Madam Director or Mr. CAO, can that report come to us either at council or at committee in that first meeting in January? That would be is that the 9th?
Perfect.
And in terms of moving ahead, is there any preference? Does committee want that to come to council so that, or would you want it to committee and you'd add an extra week or something to it? So, you want to come to council, I think? Is that possible, Mr. CEO? So what I would recommend then is that we receive the report and ask for that. I like how you've talked about it, Councillor, rationalization and additional substance to the report, and then have staff bring that forward to council, so that it actually doesn't delay anything, but it gives that additional information that some councillors were looking for. Colleagues, Councillor Rivak, Councillor King, you're okay with that? Councillor?
Absolutely okay with that.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Rivak.
I think a lot of the report would benefit by us bringing it back. I just want to be sure that those items that are listed as deficiencies in the area of health, safety, sanitation are not going to be delayed because of that. There's a discussion here of 4 staff members who work in sanitary sewers for their work tasks, no provision for showering or washing with potable water. And that's not the sort of thing that we would want to have hanging out there for any extended period of time, now that we know about them. So let's be sure that as we go through the process of getting more information on the whole report, that the individual items that are actually kind of discreetly of a nature that's somewhat urgent and can be separated, that if they were intended to be done in the near future, that they not be delayed because of this.
Okay,
That's my
thank you.
concern.
Councillor King?
I'm not going to add to it after all, Mr. Mayor, because I don't want to belabor this any further. I feel that a lot of work has been done already. The unfortunate thing is that the report wasn't prefaced with all of this planning information that obviously the department has gone to a lot of work to prepare. So I really think that the whole discussion could be curtailed or could have been curtailed had the information been brought forward in the first place. But now that we've decided, or I think we may decide, that we would like further information to come forward to the January meeting, enough is being said about it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Durley?
I was okay with this 20 minutes ago.
Okay, sorry, I thought you, okay, so if we can have an amendment to receive it, ask for that additional information, and send it to council. I mean, it doesn't delay anything because we can't forthwith it now anyways. It has to go to council on the first meeting in January. So it doesn't delay anything, it just gets that information there so that hopefully all councillors have their questions answered and are comfortable with it. So Councillor Papp, will you move
I'm
that?
going to move that.
Any other debate on that? Hearing Councillor Durley saying he wrote 20 minutes ago. All those in favor of receiving it, forwarding it to council and getting that additional information? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Or sorry, that's an amendment. And now to the motion as amended, correct? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We'll look forward to that report at council. Been moved by Councillor Ribbiak that Policy and Priorities Committee receive the report Core Certification Policy, and the committee recommend the council approve the Core Certification Policy. Questions or comments? All those in favor? I'm sorry, Councillor Junkin. Sorry, I didn't see you.
If I could, just ask the chief that, was this discussed with just between the district chiefs, or did all the volunteers have a say in this?
Chief?
As yours, Mayor, this was done through the DCs and the captains and the training division.
Okay.
And we relayed this, and then general membership is just part of their annual training. It's just this really, what it does is it makes sure that we meet all the basic training requirements. So so if something does go down and we're audited, I guess if you want to use the word audited, that we show that we did our due diligence by doing this training year after year.
Great, thank you.
Just my understanding of this is that it's not sort of if you don't meet the training, you're automatically cut off. No, there's sort of a period that where you get your training back up to speed. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, actually, there's certain types or the calls that guys are able to respond to or participate in. So if someone failed to do their defibrillation recertification, then he would not be allowed to go on medical calls. Or if he didn't do his SCBA training, he would not be able to go to a structure fire until he did that training. So
Okay.
they're not taken off the department. They're
That's what
just
okay.
cut back.
So it's just that portion for which they need to renew their training on. Okay, that's great. Anything further? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Papp that Policy and Priorities Committee receive the report Rules and Regulations for Fire Department members, and the committee recommend the council approve the policy. Questions? Comments? Question, Chief, about this 40%. What does that mean? There's something in here about a training for 40%.
Again, through that is, it aligns with the core certifications that we're mandated in the province to provide so many hours of training, and that firefighters participate in those hours. If they don't maintain that 40%, then they don't meet that criteria, which creates undue liability for us.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Oh, sorry, Councilor Ribbiak, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a fairly straightforward document, and there's not a whole lot of questions, but I do have one. One of the rules suggested is that all members shall obey all policies and operating. Sorry, that's not the one I'm looking at. No member of the department shall refuse a direct order from a superior officer. I guess my question has to do with the health and safety legislation, wherein employees generally have a right to refuse, or does that not apply in fire departments? For clarification, if I may.
Chief?
Mr. Mayor, that's during emergency or operational issues. So in our health and safety and fire is broken in under two distinct standards. NFPA 1500, which is non-emergency, and all health and safety, the Green Book applies. So you have the right to refuse. Under 1521, which is emergency situations, you don't have the right to refuse. We're an essential service, and so under the emergency operations, the 1521 policy applies.
Councilor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That makes perfect sense. I wonder if that distinction is clear, however, in that. It says, no member of the department shall refuse a direct order from a superior officer. Perhaps the words in an emergency situation might help clarify it.
Chief? Can we make that amendment?
Trying to think that there could be situations like if an officer orders a firefighter to wash a truck, or he asks him to clean something up. Along that line, there might be some situations, I'm just trying to think around the hall that, when it comes to health and safety, absolutely, but washing a truck wouldn't be a health and safety issue.
Mr. Mayor, my question has everything to do with health and safety only. I think if a member, I suppose, raised a question about washing a truck in terms of safety, then he does in fact have a right in the Safety Act to refuse. He can't refuse the order, whether or not it's in a uniformed service in employment, unless it's on the basis of safety, if he's trained to do that work, if he's capable of doing it, has all the background for it. So my question is with regard to health and safety purely.
So for instance, I think the councilor's asking not whether I guess in that point it would be a staff relationship if it's a non-emergency, sort of a staff, a captain might ask another staff member that reports to them to do a task, wash the truck. The councilor's saying, is it safe for the member to do that? Maybe there's whatever it is there, and he's, no, wash the truck, you have to do the order, even though it may not, this is what you're requesting.
That's right, Mr. Mayor. If someone doesn't want to wash the truck and says no, I suppose that's classic insubordination. But if someone says I don't want to wash the truck because at this particular moment there's some reason why that's unsafe for me to do, then he has that right to refuse. And I'm just looking to, I don't want to split the hair too finely. It's just that we're passing a policy here that says that no member of the department shall refuse a direct order from a superior officer, and the health and safety element that in fact provides people the opportunity to refuse isn't acknowledged in it. And I'd hate to see this thing overturned because of that.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Durley, I'm sure, adding his experience and member of the fire service. I'm going to go to you first in this area. Councillor Durley.
Mayor, a lot of these things are what's been done for years and years and years, and through the practices and procedures of firefighting. So, in fact, all you're doing is really putting them to writing, so in case you get audited, you say we've done this. I think some of this goes without saying that, if you're a firefighter, you do this and you don't do that. It's just a matter of putting it in writing, so nobody can say you didn't tell me that. And I think that's the whole issue behind this. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, I totally agree, but also you bring up a valid point the right to refuse even in an emergency situation, if a captain, we always promote scene safety and you know, cooperation, is if someone asks someone to do something and there definitely was a safety concern, he does have the right to bring it up. He won't refuse, but he might say, you know what, did you know that that was there? And he might say, no, I didn't know, I'm sorry. Okay, let's change our tactic, right? So there are situations, we are a paramilitary organization, and we're structured around, and in order for our own safety and the safety of our fellow firefighters, we need to stick to a paramilitary structure, and sometimes it may not make sense to the civilians or to the public for the things we do or how we do it, but a lot of it hinges on our safety.
Mr. CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to add for council's information that our policies do not supersede or trump any provincial, federal policy or legislation. So, the concern is valid, but it's, if somebody was to pursue it, I mean, provincial legislation trumps it. So what I might suggest is just putting some wording in that says notwithstanding any applicable legislation, yada, yada, yada.
That's exactly what I was thinking, yeah.
That cleans it up.
And that's easiest thing.
Okay, thank you. And that may answer other questions. Councillor Papp, did you have other?
No, he hadn't, just read my mind, because Bill 168, 132, all these
All that
things,
stuff.
I just went through this today. It still applies. It doesn't matter whether you're in the police, military, and as long as you put the disclaimer in there, you're fine.
Thank you. And just to build on that, the one that came to my mind was, what if there was an accident at the workplace and you have to file a WSIB and do all those other things? The policy says, shall immediately report the injury to the chief of the department or the officer in charge. It doesn't say anything about reporting it in the normal way that you're supposed to report a health and safety. So by putting that in and following the legislation, I think it solves that.
Yep.
So if, can we make that, do you have the wording for that amendment? Councillor Papp, or Councillor Ribbiak, will you move that amendment?
I will.
That they add the words notwithstanding
Any applicable legislation.
any applicable legislation. Okay? Call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? Amendment carries. Now to the policy as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried as amended. Thank you. Now to old business, municipal grant policy, and it's been moved by Councillor Kersey that the Policy and Priorities Committee receive the proposed municipal grant policy, and the committee recommend the council approve the policy. Councillor Papp?
Forward it to council for approval, right?
Recommend that the council approve it.
Great,
Yeah.
okay. That's fine.
Councillor Kersey?
Thank you. I have one little question. The majority of this policy talks about in-kind services, and yet there's reference made to SOCAN fees, which is a fee that the town pays for the use of music at public events and all of that, and that's a direct expense. So was that the intention to have SOCAN fees included in there? It's
Madam
right
Treasurer?
in,
Sorry, I'm just trying to find that reference in here.
under key facts, the first block under key facts, the town of Pelham provides 3 categories of grant awards. Application-based process, and then the last line, the last bullet talks about SOCAN fees.
Yes, sorry, that last line should have been deleted from this policy. So it is not including anything that would be a cash payment.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. Others? The policy speaks to, I don't really have it here because my computer's not working, but so ongoing event, and I commend that it's going on for events, but it talks about here not-for-profits, organizations, that is not directly related to the development and organization of a significant event. Grant funding will not be awarded for ongoing expenses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're a committee, we're a service club in Pelham, we're organizing an event, and we have 17 meetings leading up to the event in a town facility. Are those meetings covered or not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, those meetings would be covered. What we are trying to do is to eliminate their social nights. So in the past, their previous requests for in-kind contributions include association nights, dinners and socials and so forth like that, that were also part of their grant award. So we are saying that strictly this is for the planning and designing of an organizing of that significant event. And they have those agendas already made out. I have talked to a few of the organization groups about the changes that might be coming with this, going to some of their meetings in January to explain the process. And they are very encouraged by the different types of applications that they have under this grant process, but we are mentioning to them that it is purely for those meetings that relate to that design and organization of that significant event.
Okay, thank you. That's interesting. So, I guess the final question for committee is, do we want to hear from those groups? It sounds like you're going out to some of the meetings. Do we want to hear some of the feedback from that, or before we approve it, or do we want to
Change it every
just
year.
approve it and change it every year anyways?
Go for it. Change it next year.
I'd say no.
Councilor Collings?
No.
Councilor Papp?
Just quickly, so who would you be going to see? Kinsman, Rotary,
Through
Lions?
you, Mr. Mayor, I have talked to a member of the Lions, but I am going to the Kinsman meeting in January, to explain. What they need to understand under this policy, they actually have more opportunity for grants than they did before with respect to the discretionary amount that council has. They have, when we looked at the average waiving of fees, it was around the 2,500, which is what we've accommodated with that first application process. And the third application process, the labor assistance one, we're not really documenting all of that in kind because it comes at different venues and we're not really getting to know how much. So this grant application process will help us to document all the types of services we provide to the community. So we want to show that we're supporting them with their significant events because they're important to us as a community as well. And they are getting a feeling now from just some of the discussions that we've been having with them that this is a better opportunity for them.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I don't see going out to the organizations, as the CAO alluded to, we do react to these things. So I'd say we know that the old policy was not working the way we had envisioned that it was working. So we're taking steps to improve it, in our view. Let's put it out there. If at the end of 1 year we find that they have some feedback, then that's an opportunity for us to look at it and tweak it if need be. This looks like a wonderful policy. I think it really will work out well, but that's my feeling, Mr. Mayor. I think it'll only add confusion to the issue.
Councilor Rivyak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question, but perhaps not necessarily on this exact point, but I just wanted to let you know that I wanted to have a chance to ask a question.
Okay. Here's what I would recommend, and I ask the CAO this. This really is a budgetary item in terms of the timing for the policy. And we just had a very long discussion about Tice Road building renovations because we felt that we weren't involved in the process. And I think for council to consider something without involving at least some of those significant partners that are involved in the process would be sort of, not in keeping with the discussion we just had. I don't believe, as I understand, it's imperative that council approve this at the start of January. We do have a budget meeting at the end of January. And so instead of recommending it to council, what I would recommend is that we recommend it to the operating budget discussion that we're going to have. We may be in a situation where we won't have any problems, any challenges, or we may be in a situation where something will come to light and we need to adjust it. So in terms of the amount, I think, is what the budgetary piece is, but the policy can come back to budget. That's what I would suggest. The treasurer has other idea. Madam Treasurer, you want to, something contrary
Yeah,
perhaps?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we certainly could do that. We are very late in the application process already for this year, as we usually started in September. And then we start booking the rooms in for the waiving of the fees. It still needs to be booked through our facilities system. So by delaying it, it just delays that process. And also, when can the application process happen? So that's why the groups have been reaching out, because they're trying to get the applications intact. We certainly could do the application process and still to have discussions with them and bring a report back to council before the actual policy is approved, because technically the dollar value has not changed from last year, so it's not doing anything to the budget. So if that's okay for council, then I would get the applications out the door and have them come back in and do a report back on that.
So just for clarity, would this still go to council or say go to budget?
No, we can go to
but-
budget. We're just saying, Mr. Mayor, that
the
we would like
process
just to
going.
put the open the
Yeah.
application window. We're not giving, council's not approving anything. We're just facilitating the
Yeah.
process so we don't get behind.
Okay. So recommend that it goes to budget?
If that's what you want, yeah, that's fine. It's no problem.
Okay. Well, having heard that, I mean, we could change it too, but, okay. Let's say, what's the will of council? Do you want to go, or committee members, do you want to go to budget or to council, leave it the way it is, or?
Go to
30
budget-
seconds.
Go to budget, get the
Recommend that.
applications out. It's late.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendment? Any opposed? Thank you. Councilor Rivak?
Thank you. I just want some clarity, if I may, with regard to the nature of council's prerogatives within this. We had a discussion last time we talked about this, in which we talked about most of this being in kind, either facilities or labor, and that cash would be something the council would from time to time maybe decide on, and that would be, if I remember correctly, outside the policy, outside the granting policy. But it's here, as the second point in the town of Pelham approves 3 categories of grant awards. It speaks of a maximum of 20,000 annually, which I don't object to, but I'm not clear in this thing that that's cash only or in kind only, or to the extent in which it's bounded by the statement earlier on that grant funding will not be awarded for ongoing operational expenses or for facility use that is not directly related to the development or organization of the significant event. I don't know. Is that an application, or does that restriction apply to council delegations or council decisions around cash? I thought we would provide ourselves greater discretion around decision-making based on the merits of whatever comes forward outside of this granting process.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Based on the previous report that I put in front of council about the hybrid type of policy that we're going to bring forward, one of the things was that council wanted some discretion with respect to things that were coming in after the application process closed. So this $20,000, this annual contribution to that remains within our budgeted amount in total, but it is at council's full discretion. If there is a delegation or a correspondence item that comes, it could either be in cash or it could be in kind. And that was completely left up to the will of council to decide that. And what we were going to do is provide, every time we knew that there was correspondence item happening or a delegation that was going to come in, we would give you that dollar value and what's already been utilized from it in previous decisions of council. And then when it was completed, we would indicate to council that that fund had been completely used up. But we just think that this is a good opportunity for all those other ones that come in after the fact. They didn't know an event was going to happen. Then they come to council, and we've already closed down the policy, and now we're going outside of it. This allows us to remain inside that policy.
Thank you. Councilor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the policy, I guess, separates this whole action between application-based stuff, which is like what we were doing before, and that which we will have discretion to do ourselves when people come forward with whatever it is that they want to ask us about and we think is important enough to respond to, and that we are bounded by the $20,000 which I think is wise. It's not a bottomless pit. But I also want to know about the extent to which we are bounded by the award for ongoing operational expenses or not. It just might be that that's exactly what's being asked for and that we think is important enough to respond to. So I'm just wondering whether item 2, council delegations, need to have those further restrictions on it, given that we have a ceiling to which we can't break through, and therefore would be careful about what we would do with that allowance.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The extent of the ongoing operational expenses has not changed from the previous policy that we had. It is basically the lights and the water and the energy and stuff used to house or run a building. What we wanted to make sure, which was what kind of I felt was council's direction, that any expenses that they're incurring are for that significant event. So they're having to book meeting rooms, or they're having to go out to forums or whatever. So they can come into council, and like we had with the other policy, it's very difficult sometimes to tell what is that piece that might be considered operational or not. But this gives council that full discretion to determine what they feel is a responsible grant option for them, and then they get to decide based on that. So I've left that area very wide open for council to make that ultimate decision.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can think of hypothetical situations where we might want to go around that, but you know what? They would be pretty rare, and we'll deal with them if and when they come along. So I'll leave it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Durley wanted us to ask the question 20 minutes ago, so let's call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. It's been moved by Councillor Durley that the P&P Committee received the November 2016 Fire and Bylaw Services Report for information. Thanks, Chief, for putting that in. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. It's been moved by Councillor Papp that this regular meeting of Committee of the Whole be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for January 19th, 2017. This regular meeting of committee
See you next year.
be adjourned. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.